All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our seminar on electrolyzed water and innovative technology that's changing the way we clean and disinfect. I'm really excited to introduce you to our panelists today. We've got John is running a little bit behind, but he should be joining us momentarily. For now, let's start with my colleague, Daniel Lawson. He's the co-founder and president of business affairs at Viking Pure. And we are transforming the way that facilities clean and disinfect with this innovative system that generates safe, sustainable electrolyzed water solutions on site and on demand. We've also got Alicia McCarthy. She is the laboratory specialist at the Toxics Use Reduction Institute, TURI, located at UMass Lowell. She works with formulators, manufacturers, companies, and organizations to research and test safer cleaning and disinfection solutions and devices. We've also got Richard Helvey. He is a recently retired leader in healthcare support services, most recently serving as EVS director at Lee Health. During his 40-year career, Rick participated in the evolution of the environmental service profession, and he was a charter member of the Association for the Healthcare Environment and served as a board member and president of both the Ohio Society for Support Service Management and the Florida Society for Healthcare Environmental Services. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
How's it going?
Thank you.
Good. So let's start with Alicia here. In your role at the Toxics Use Reduction Institute, I'm sure you have particular insight about the harms of chemicals that facilities currently use to clean and disinfect. Can you tell us a little bit more about those hazards and maybe share a little bit about what TURI is doing to identify and reduce toxics?
Sure. Our interest area in regards to sanitization and disinfection actually has been focused more on the food and beverage sector and also hard surfaces, porous surfaces applications, both in industrial settings, but also in consumer settings as well. And two particular chemical groups of concern that we're worried about are the quaternary ammonium compounds and chlorine-based bleach. So those are definitely two that we're trying to move away from, including sodium hydroxide in certain applications. So we've been really active in looking and partnering with different vendors to learn about new technologies, both devices, but also safer cleaners and active ingredients for disinfection applications. And we really lean in on the EPA M list to kind of guide us in some of those active ingredients that are maybe safer options. But just because they're listed as safer doesn't mean that they may be safe depending on use. So we really kind of gauge each scenario when we're working with a company on how they're using it, what their needs are, and making sure that they're not overdoing it, which could really play into role of overpaying on certain things or overusing, which could lead to resistance or other impacts when it comes to the hazards from inhalation of certain types of chemicals or sensitization or other chronic issues.
Awesome. Thank you. Dan, Viking Pure's mission is centered around removing toxic cleaning chemicals and replacing them with safer alternatives. Can you talk a little bit more about the reasoning behind our mission and explain a little bit about why we feel change is necessary and why we're leading this effort?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for everybody for joining us today, too. This is an honor to have this opportunity to share this panel as well as present on these very important topics of conversations, ones that we hold very dear to our heart. I love being asked about our mission, obviously to remove toxic chemicals from the environment. I think the reason why we're so passionate about it is because, frankly, there's just people don't know or appreciate how dangerous, some of these day-to-day products really are, not just, from a, short-term exposure, perspective with using products and maybe, feeling lightheaded or short of breath or, potentially, having a migraine, onset because of, an overwhelming fragrance or interaction with a chemical. But really the long-term effects that we're learning, more and more about and are, being, published and presented in, our, clinical world's most reputable journals. Not to, regurgitate a talking point that I speak to often, but, there is data, now that has, compounded over 20, 30 years of data collection to show that, long-term exposure to day-to-day, normal name brand, cleaning chemicals can lead to significant, increases in lung degeneration. There are, chemicals out there that are found in, household cleaners, degreasers, floor cleaners, carpet cleaners, et cetera, that lead to, 600 times, more prevalence of, Parkinson's disease. So, our mission, is to remove these toxic chemicals. And, we kind of have two different ways of going about it. It's bifurcated in a sense. We have a technology, right, that we can implement that can create non-toxic cleaning and disinfecting chemicals that are maximally effective. But in addition to that, we have a commitment to education, and providing awareness. So, we want to be that beacon, if you will, of excellence, in regard to, providing this just general awareness to these, studies that I think, people would really want to hear about, considering, how regularly, we associate ourselves or surround ourselves with these different types of products.
Yeah, for sure. Richard, do you want to jump in here and maybe share some examples from your career as EVS director, and maybe some places where the use of cleaning chemicals caused harm or their presence created more risk for building occupants?
Certainly. Thanks, Norel. Like Dan, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel. I think it's so important for our industry to be looking at these sorts of issues, and I appreciate what Viking Pure has been doing in this arena. As you mentioned in the introduction, I've been doing this for a long time. I just recently retired. 40 years I've been doing this, and I've seen a lot during that time. And it's as a new leader, when I got into it, the products that we used and the workers that were using them, it concerned me when I started to see certain things. I'd see issues with like dermatitis and hypopigmentation, which I had older employees that their hands actually started to depigment. And that was from the chemicals that they had been using throughout their career. And that's what always kind of stuck with me, is the people in this industry are usually doing it for 10, 20, 30 years sometimes, working with these chemicals. So it was just near and dear to me that I had to work on ways to help protect that staff. There was respiratory issues, and, even from the occupants in the buildings where we were working, that they would talk about these things. And so, unfortunately, back in those days, our only options, and even until recently, were just bleach and these other toxic disinfectants. And, I think the biggest thing for me was educating our staff on the proper use of those, because we didn't have an option. We had to use them. And so in order for our staff to be safe, we really had to focus on educating that staff, making sure that they understood how to properly use these chemicals, how to properly protect themselves, as well as give them a little bit of an understanding of, how they work and what they are actually. As Dan and I think others have said, they're pesticides. And so, I think the other thing for me was environmental awareness. I think it was the first Earth Day was like in 1970, I believe. And that's really when things started to change. People started to hear more about the impact of whatever the industry was that it was having on our environment. And that was beginning to concern me when I would witness the amount of waste that we were generating in our supply chain from packaging. And also, it bothered me with the effect of the wastewater that we were putting back into our, into the wastewater system when we'd finish. And I was thinking about it, and I actually did a little bit of research on this. And probably just 10 years ago, the standard methodology was, in a hospital, for example, which is what I'm speaking to here, change your water after every 3 patient rooms. Okay, so they had a 4-gallon bucket, and in a 150 bed hospital, every day they were pouring 200 gallons of these solutions down into the wastewater system. So I tried to extrapolate that out, and I think there was like 900,000 hospital beds in the United States, and I said, all right, 75% occupancy. What would that mean with people emptying these 4-gallon buckets every 3 rooms? Well, it turns out that was at 327 million gallons of these solutions being put into our wastewater systems in this healthcare environment. And that really was cause for concern. And I think the movement that we're hearing and talking about now is addressing that. And so I think the innovation in our profession was kind of slow in the beginning, but I think science, technology, and I think leadership skills for the people that are running our institutions now are catching up. And I think that pace of change is improving. And fortunately, I think safety and sustainability are the important part of our industry now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, and before this call, we were talking too about how things have changed with leadership and who's in charge and who's making those decisions. And it's definitely exciting times for sure. So Dan, do you want to kind of explain to us, I know you and I are very familiar, but tell us, what is electrolyzed water? How is it made? And what are the solutions that result from it? And, why are they better than the commonly used chemicals that people are currently using in their facilities?
Yeah, always excited to talk about electrolyzed water, obviously. But in a nutshell, I mean, it's a very simple science. Essentially, you are mixing, three ingredients: water, salt, and electricity together to create two very powerful solutions that kind of each equally have their own application specific, indication, if you will. The salt ion, sodium chloride, the same type of salt, that you would find on your kitchen table at home, although in a very pure form, regarding, kind of its interaction with our technology, is separated, through this membrane technology as a result of, coming in contact with electricity. And through this separation, you get the two, main ions of sodium chloride, sodium and chlorine. Those are essentially added to fresh streams of water, and you get these byproducts of each other that, are almost 100% water, but have a very small, percentage of either free available chlorine or hypochlorous acid, if you will, and sodium hydroxide, again, at extremely lower concentrations compared to, what you may find, in products kind of sold over the counter. And those two products are intended to be used in a handful of different ways. The hypochlorous acid is specifically from Viking Pure, is called Viking Pure disinfectant. And this solution is an independently registered hospital grade disinfectant that possesses a tremendous, kill list, as well as an amazing safety profile. The other product, the sodium hydroxide based product, or Viking Pure Cleaner, if you will, is a degreasing and emulsifying, solution. Has a slightly elevated pH and is an amazing multi-purpose cleaner. And when we integrate, this technology into our partner locations, it's really with the cleaning solution that our partners see a majority of their chemical consolidation or substitution, as that product can be used, really on any surface, floors, glass, carpet, as it possesses all of these different credentials, to be used in those ways, to break down, to remove residue, to present, the clean surfaces that you would expect from using cleaning chemicals. What you don't get with electrolyzed water, type of products that you would with, more traditional chemicals are some of the more common handling characteristics that we've become accustomed to. Electrolyzed water solutions do not have overwhelming fragrances or any fragrances added to the product. There's no soaps or colors added to them. So when they are applied to surfaces or to an environment, you're not left with like lingering, kind of nauseating smells. You're not left with sticky residues or streaks, on surfaces because of those, those additives, that have, built up on, to surfaces for some time, thus contributing to biofilm creation and this adaptive resistance that Alicia was talking about a little bit earlier. So all in all, you get, the mechanism of action, right, that you're looking for in a chemical, either disinfection or cleaning and degreasing, really without all the baggage. And the best part, I think, from an operations perspective, is you're generating these products on site in unlimited amounts. You're no longer buying, storing, or using toxic chemical. The facility, whether it be a healthcare facility, senior living community, school, food packaging, processing organization, whatever, takes ultimate, control over their chemical creation and need, and then really have this ability to generate all of the product that they need when they need it, and can safely use it, throughout their environment.
So it sounds a little like, magic, water, salt, electricity, and all that. Can you speak a little bit to the efficacy specifically with the hypochlorous acid disinfectant and how it works against bacteria, viruses, pathogens, and the like?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like magic. It kind of is a little magical, honestly. I feel like it is. And we have many customers that one of them may actually be joining us today. From a partner in the Midwest who has creatively called it the Harry Potter magic water, which I think has a nice ring to it. Especially considering that we're headquartered not too far from there in Orlando and Disney World. But no, hypochlorous acid has a very unique mechanism of action. Not to get too in the weeds, but it kind of it interacts with germs, if you will, in a way that the germs don't recognize that the hypochlorous acid is present before it's essentially too late. At a molecular level, hypochlorous acid possesses what's called a neutral charge. So when it comes in contact with a negatively charged pathogen, whether it be E. coli, Salmonella, MRSA, whatever, because of its neutral charge, it's able to penetrate the cell wall of that germ without really being detected by the germ. And once it is inside of the cell, it releases the free available chlorine or the hypochlorous acid, and it immediately deactivates, the mitochondria and really kind of what allows that cell to function and to operate. And it happens instantaneously. This is different than the way that, that more traditional chemicals may work, in the sense that they may also possess a negative charge. And when you think about, butting up two negative sides of a battery together, right, there's almost like a resistance, that occurs at first. And that's kind of what you're dealing with, when you're comparing the two. It's just an amazing, chemical in its ability to kind of sneak up on the germ, right, and take it out without the germ really knowing that it was ever there. So
awesome, thank you for that. Rick, how did you hear about electrolyzed water and hypochlorous acid, and what were kind of some of the focus areas that you used to evaluate it before bringing it into Lee Health?
It was interesting. I mean, I've always been looking for, a better alternative, safer alternatives. And I actually came across a product several years ago called aqueous ozone. And aqueous ozone was, a product that was, pretty much a safe green product. It didn't have the strength and the things that Viking product offers, in that it wasn't a disinfectant. However, I was able to replace a lot of different things because of it, but it wasn't really achieving what I wanted it to do, which was to replace those disinfectants. And so I continued to look into different things, and I don't remember exactly, but I come across the hypochlorous acid. And so I started to do research, and Dan does a great job of explaining it in layman terms where you can understand it. When you start reading these research papers, it's very confusing, especially to a layman. So, I understood enough to know that this might be something that's worth pursuing. And so, again, in my research, I ran across Viking Pure. And so I visited their website, and which had a wealth of information about it and intrigued me. So then I reached out to the company and contacted, I believe, Dan I was talking with. So, we talked some more about it, and so then Dan, we arranged a visit. And at this time, too, I started to funnel some of this information to our infection prevention team, because we don't really do anything in the hospital without the blessing of the infection control people. And so they were intrigued by it as well. So, Dan came in, and then as he did a little bit here, he explained the process and how it worked. And again, we were interested. But, cautious, people are always telling you all kinds of things, and you have to say, well, what's true and what's not. And so, Dan came in then, and we infection prevention was satisfied with the information that he was able to provide, actually impressed with the information that he was able to provide. And so then, Dan, we coordinated a pilot program at our hospital, and we wanted to limit it because and I wanted it to be more structured, because sometimes, you get products in and you give them out to people, and if you don't do a good, thorough job, you get more opinions than actually what the reality is. I like the smell, I didn't like the smell, this or that. And change is always hard. So people are unaccepting whenever you make any changes. So anyway, long story short, we put it into one patient care unit, and it was an immediate hit. The people really liked it, the way the product worked. And so word started to spread, and then we ran into an issue or a little bit of a problem, because people were going up to the unit and they were getting this material, they were getting the product and taking it back to their unit. So, after kind of more testing, and then also with the blessing of our infection prevention team, we expanded it and actually rolled it out everywhere. And it was a big success. People really enjoyed working with it in the sense that it, like Dan or someone had alluded to earlier, the quats, which was our main, defense, leave a residue. They leave, people always talk about, oh, the floor's sticky, or it's tacky, or this or that. And we just couldn't get away from that. Well, this product, the detergent comes in and does a great job of cutting that residue that has been building up over years. And then once that's gone, and then you start utilizing the disinfectant product, it makes a huge difference. It doesn't leave a residue. It doesn't streak. And so, when I started down this path with the aqueous ozone, I was halfway there. And I think when I saw what in the product that from Viking Pure, the hypochlorous acid, and the other product, that was the ultimate for me. That accomplished those objectives that I had set. And so, it was a big success, and we had the blessing of our infection control team. And I think the more we learned about it, the more we liked the product. And so that's kind of how it evolved. And, it's been a success for us in our facility.
Awesome. Love that. A lot of use case testing. On the official side, Alicia, I know you and Turi have done lots of testing on hypochlorous acid. Can you speak to how it compares with some of the other well-known disinfectants out there, like bleach and quaternary ammonium compounds?
Yeah, we've definitely done a lot of work, and particularly, like you said, around those particular chemical groups, because that's what people have easy access to. It's affordable, it's cheap. One of the key things with our testing compared to maybe some other ones is contact time. So a majority of the bottles that you see out there may recommend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on what the active ingredient is. In the real world setting, people don't have that long to wait. So we actually test worst case scenarios, which can be more fun because you get to see if it actually works in practicality. So we were testing and comparing hypochlorous acid with quaternary ammonium compounds, bleach, and some of those active ingredients like lactic acid, citric acid, anything on the EPA list at 30 seconds and 1 minute. And I'd like to highlight, though, a majority of our work that we've done has been around clean surfaces, because we really like to reinforce the idea that you need to clean first before you disinfect. And it's really important for people to remember those steps in order, because that's really going to have an impact of whether your disinfectant is doing what you are trying to use it for in those applications. Our plan is to also test what happens when you don't clean. Those are next steps coming up. So we're really excited to see what happens on a variety of different ASTM soils that are commonly used for third-party performance testing for Ecologo, Green Seal, and Safer Choice certifications. So we'll definitely have more information on that, but we are seeing that it is working, as well as those other alternative products. And we were even looking at some of the concerns surrounding chlorine exposure from an air measurement standard area, where we have a mock bathroom here at the lab and got to enclose it and actually do comparative testing of a variety of different ECA devices, small scale and a little bit larger. And you were kind enough to provide a sample for us to actually test out on site here and compare it to a lot of the bleach-based recommended dilutions that were utilized during the pandemic for COVID, which really, you didn't need much to kill COVID because it has that lithophile layer that gets broken down. So we were actually testing with MS2 bacteriophage, which is it's safer because it only infects bacteria. It doesn't actually infect humans, but it's a major killer of bacteria out there. But it is also harder to kill than what COVID was. So it was a really good indicator of if we could kill the MS2 bacteriophage, we knew it could definitely kill COVID, which was at that time the major concern of could it do that. But we've been expanding to other types of bacteria, and our research isn't done, but we are, to answer your question, it is working as well as those other alternatives.
Awesome, thank you for that. To all of our participants out there listening in, feel free to put in some questions in the chat or the Q&A section. Either one is fine, and if we have any, we'll address those at the end, but just wanted to make a little note there. Dan, since John hasn't been able to join us, I'd like you to answer this one. Why are electrolyzed water solutions better in environments such as healthcare or senior living, or even food production, where there are more issues to think about, for example, building occupants being more vulnerable in the healthcare setting, or needing solutions to be safe for food contact surfaces in the food production space? If you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is it's simplicity, right? It's eliminating variety. It's being able to to implement solutions that are really, really hard to use incorrectly. And even if used incorrectly, they don't possess, the risk, right, of causing, significant damage, right, like to a surface or potentially harm, to the user. I think the reason why, facilities are moving toward this technology, especially today, post-COVID, is because I think a lot of industries were exposed, in their level of preparedness, a couple of years ago, and looking at opportunities to take on more sustainable or autonomous approaches to controlling their outcomes through on-site generation and not having to rely on standard supply chain measures for product availability is a huge attractive piece, especially when to Alicia's point and then to Richard's point, you can use products that you're not lacking in efficacy. And as a matter of fact, you may be improving, right, like in your efficacy outcomes because you're using just much simpler, products that are easy to interpret, they're easy to handle. Team members are clearly, more attracted to, I think less options and just simply ease of use.
Thank you. Richard, so before and after implementing the electrolyzed water generation system at Lee Health, what were some of the advantages that you saw with electrolyzed water, especially as alternatives to toxic chemicals? I know you had spoken a little bit earlier about the physical health harms with hyperpigmentation and discoloration of skin and stuff like that. But I guess speaking more to the general advantages that you saw with this system.
Well, again, I go back to the fact that, my intention in this has always been to look for the safety of our patients, our employees, and the general population. And so, that was the number one advantage, that I knew what we were doing before, and I knew what the impact of these products were going to have on that process. And so, the elimination of quats, as Alicia's alluded to, they're under investigation for the impact that they have, and that was the standard, I would guess, in our industry. Pretty much that's it. And the use of bleach as well. And so while we still haven't been able to finally really, eliminate the use of bleach, in some instances, we've eliminated the use of quats. And as I said, that eliminated our sticky floor problem, and also, it improved our staff safety. it reduced the toxic water that we were disposing of into our water system. And in where I'm at here in Southwest Florida, that's a huge issue. We are struggling, it's in the news, national news even, about the impact of, we have what's called red tide, and we have these algae blooms that occur, and they all have an impact on our water system. And so it's a big concern for people down here, because, water is, tourism is our livelihood down here. And so we need to have clean water for that, as well as for the environment overall. I think we had improved cleaning results. The products work better than what we were doing. And I think, probably one of the bigger innovations that we've had has been the introduction of the microfiber cleaning cloth. That has had a huge impact on our industry, in the fact that that's such a important tool in the work that we're doing. And so, with these products in combination, you no longer have the streaking. You have more of a higher level of satisfaction with the work that you're doing. It's more effective. I think, and then there's the staff morale and their satisfaction overall. I mean, we're giving them better products, which they're recognizing, and it makes their job easier. And it's a difficult job. And so, I know this product can be used in any industry, but I think the healthcare is a little bit of a unique industry in the fact that the people never leave our buildings. A lot of the industries out there, the cleaning takes place after hours. The people are gone, the cleaning crew comes in and they do their thing. Where in healthcare, that's not the case. We're cleaning around patients, we're cleaning around staff. And so it's very important, the products that we're using, because, if people are breathing these things, if there are VOCs coming off that are, part of the environment. It really had a huge impact on our inventory footprint. Prior to the introduction of this product, we had plastic coming in cardboard boxes, and plastic going out, and cardboard going out. And so that has been eliminated and reduced drastically, because we're manufacturing this product right on our site, in our facility. We're just supplying water, and the equipment does the rest. And then we have product. And it really came into play recently with the hurricane that we experienced here. We had a direct hit in Fort Myers area here, and that disrupted the supply chain. And so, product couldn't come in. People were struggling, and we didn't have a problem at all. We were manufacturing our disinfectant just as like anything, nothing had happened. And so, and in addition to that, with the supply chain, we've experienced, and probably the people out there listening to this have experienced as well, with, it's out of stock. We're going to have to put a substitute in. And so those things create problems for the staff, giving them something new, and, all the things that we want to do. And as far as, training and the consistency that Dan was speaking to, this just eliminates a lot of that. We have, I can't tell you exactly how many, but we've eliminated, glass cleaner, floor cleaners, carpet cleaners. We've eliminated so many general purpose cleaners. And then also we've eliminated, in some cases, in most cases, actually, the use of our quats as a disinfectant. So there's that. I think, and there's good product support from the company, which I feel is important. I think Dan has exhibited his knowledge of this subject and the products and what they can do. And they came in and they talked like with our staff. They put it in layman's terms for them, but I think it's important that the people using these products understand a little bit about why they work and how they work, not just here's the product, use it. And so I think that was a big key too, in terms of the support from the company. And I think the importance they put on educating the staff as to what it is we're trying to do and how these products work. And then, overall, it really is something that you can use. And we've made some inroads in this with, it supports our organizational mission. The organizational mission is to improve the health of our community. And, the things that we were doing contribute to that, the indoor air quality, the reduction in waste. Those are all, sustainable issues that impact the entire community. So it's not just the people in our facilities, but it's people in our communities that can benefit from these sorts of things. And then I saved the last one. And people are going, well, how much does it cost? Well, I put cost reduction in here because there was savings for us. But I put it at the bottom because my key was always safety and things of that nature. And so while cost is certainly important, I'm not trying to downplay that. For me, I think the most important thing that I was always focusing on was the safety of the products that we're putting in the hands of our people that are using these products every day for the next 20 years and the impact that it's having on them and their families. So I think there was just so many pluses with this program, and I think hopefully I've illuminated a few of them that we experience here at our facility.
Yeah, that was great. I especially liked what you said about how the fact that people are never leaving the hospital environment. You need to be able to clean and disinfect safely around patients and not put them at risk. That's a huge point. You also brought up something that we haven't really talked about much. And Dan, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind speaking to the use of electrolyzed water along with microfiber and the healthcare grade ultra microfiber kind of aspect of using these solutions.
Yeah, I mean, Richard said it. I mean, in addition to, selecting an effective chemical, right, for cleaning and disinfecting, it's almost equally, sometimes if not more important to consider the quality of the material, that you're using for the mechanical removal of the germs or the soil from the surfaces. And in the world of microfiber, there are a million options. You can Google Amazon or run down to your Home Depot and pick up a microfiber product. But, not all microfiber is created the same. There are, thresholds, if you will, of quality that you can, learn more about regarding, microfiber and how it ranks. And there's, 3 or 4 providers, out there currently who specialize in what's called healthcare grade ultra microfiber, which is, really microfiber that's ultimately appropriate for the healthcare environment and all of the different situations, that an EVS or dietary or nursing, member may encounter, in their efforts to keep a clean space. So microfiber, is the gold standard, the way that it's constructed. I actually just had this conversation yesterday while I was training, in a hospital down in Georgia. It's important, to understand how microfiber works, how it's designed, to when it's being wiped across the surface to capture, the material that's on the surface and actually remove it, from the surface as opposed to, wiping it around or spreading it around. But even, healthcare quality or healthcare grade ultra microfiber can be ineffective if it's not being, used properly. And then one of the ways that we see this, so often is through oversaturation. Many facilities will fully saturate or submerge, their microfiber in their chemical of choice. And when they bring the material out and apply it to the surface, yes, they are applying chemical, obviously to the surface, but because the product, the microfiber, is so saturated, it doesn't have any room, right, like left in it because it's filled with fluid to capture the germs and actually remove them from the surface. So you really need to understand what you're looking for, when you're using a microfiber product, and if it being dry or really damp at most, when being applied to the surface, you can see and feel, it actually pulling, the biofilm from the surface. So it'll actually feel sticky and grab, the surface as it's attempting to kind of remove that. So when considering these products, obviously you want to look closely, at the certifications, the amount of time, that these products can be laundered, can be turned over and still maintain, obviously their effectiveness. But also, understand that if team members are kind of coming back and, they're seeing streaks, right, or they're seeing watermarks or, whatever, a lot of the time, the product is it's being oversaturated and it essentially turns into a string mop, and it's kind of some of those, situations where it's just moving chemical around. So, I hope that helps answer, your question there, Noelle.
Yeah, thank you for taking that one. Alicia, I know you spoke to the efficacy of hypochlorous acid before, but I'm curious, based off of your research and testing, is hypochlorous acid a viable alternative for toxic chemicals? And if you could speak on the safety side of things.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's definitely something up there that we feel is a safer option. I kind of mentioned it briefly, and I realized I never mentioned when we actually did air measurements, especially for some of the larger scale generators, not to the level that you have with Viking Pure, but even just some of the products that we're utilizing, spraying out of bottles and just generating them. We weren't reaching the chlorine levels that you would find if you were using even undiluted bleach. So that really kind of goes into what Daniel was talking about with that user error and those risks of when they're not trained properly, that they don't, like, the user might not understand the full risks associated with some of those hazardous chemicals compared to some of these other products, including hypochlorous acid and the generation of it and how to use it. But we've seen it working really well, especially within the food and beverage. Like I was saying, that's kind of where we're really putting our focus area of late. Just being able to give that as an option for them to switch out some of those more harsher chemicals that are very corrosive or caustic, depending on what they're using and what they're actually creating. But also just allowing them that foot space too, and seeing how they can reduce, like Richard was saying, of how many products they're currently using. And we're not even talking about the potential of having an accident where they get mixed together, depending on the storage situations at certain facilities, or just the general knowledge of the users themselves to make sure that they're not going to have an accident, or what are the potential health risks associated if those types of chemicals are used for long term and having synergistic effects on that person. So it is definitely something that we're exploring and we're promoting as an option to look at. And we've been successful in being able to add it to our list of safer alternative options for the food and beverage area. So it's just, I think it's a conversation, especially for those who are considering it, is to really talk to the vendors and just really understand what they're switching to, sort of like with this, and how you can fit it into your facility. So making sure that you have everyone on board within that facility to be able to kind of give that insight of, okay, maybe it's not giving you the gallons per minute that you need. Are there options? Like we had the discussion with you guys for one of our clients, for example, they were concerned that one of the pieces of equipment wasn't reaching the gallons per minute, but you had an option of them actually generating it ahead of time in a larger container that then they could utilize at that gallon per minute. So it sounds like there's a lot more variability and options that you can look into, especially for these types of larger industrial applications of hypochlorous acid, to really fit the needs of some of these different clients than having to buy and then dilute to level, especially if they don't have automated systems. You're risking people having to manually dilute products down into what they need to use and concentrate. Those are a lot higher hazards that you're going to be dealing with that could have really impactful outcomes, whether that be, eye damage, skin issues, or anything like that, or chronic asthma. So sensitization.
Yeah, thank you so much. Dan, could you kind of round us out talking a little bit about the sustainability aspect? So how on-site generation of electrolyzed water solutions is better for the environment and how facilities can use this system to reduce their environmental impact.
Now, I hope that's obvious by now in this presentation,
You spoke a little earlier. Yeah.
No, it's, listen, I mean, it's, there's just so many different, opportunities for sustainability here. And listen, like many of our customers, our potential partners and those who we haven't even engaged with yet, have amazing sustainability, efforts, right? Like presented throughout the next year and kind of beyond. There's a huge demand really for any industry to try to find these ways to integrate, more sustainable approaches to just doing business in general. And obviously integrating, electrolyzed water or Viking Pure solutions into your armamentarium, can help you check that box, from an environmental protection, perspective through, cleaning, disinfecting, just depending on the industry, the other types of, utilizations, for our product, like food washing and different things like that. But basically, you're taking control, of your your needs, and you're generating all of your own product, on site. Consider it, the same as, kind of implementing solar panels on your house, or, a generator, that can run off the grid. You're taking control. You're ensuring that you're preparing yourself for, not just your day-to-day needs, but you're integrating technology that can allow you to expand on those needs as your company continues to grow, serve more people, or potentially have to handle the next pandemic, right? That we don't know at what point is kind of around the corner. So, it is also, a sustainable approach because you're utilizing natural elements like water and salt, and the byproducts, of those products, and the waste associated with those products are as equally healthy for the environment as they are when they're being used in their day-to-day applications. So, we hope to be able to learn more, obviously about, your respective organizations, what some of your priorities and obligations are to the environment through your sustainability efforts, over the next, few years, and hope that, as this technology, electrolyzed water in general, continues to, justify itself from a regulatory perspective and efficacy perspective, that you lend that credibility, to the benefit of your environment, and see, how these technologies can truly revolutionize your efforts.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rick and Alicia, for joining us today. This has been a great conversation, and I'm really glad that you could participate.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And to all our participants, the link that you used to register for this event will have the recording here shortly. So you're welcome to rewatch it or share with other people that you work with or people in your industry. And yeah, thank you for taking some time to listen in with us today.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.